Gentlemen, what is going on today? My name is Ryan Mickler. I'm your host and the founder of the Order of Man podcast and movement. I am glad you're tuning in. Today, we're going to be talking about a very important subject, and that's the concept of sovereignty. We're going to talk about what that means. We're going to talk about how to establish it in four key areas, which are faith, family and friends, fitness, and finances. So that might sound like five, but friends and family are in the same category. Anyways, we're going to talk about sovereignty, again, what it is and why it's so important that we as men learn to establish sovereignty for ourselves, but also teach others, our family members, our friends, colleagues, coworkers, employees, etc., community members, how to become more sovereign. Before I get into that, I just want to mention my good friends over at Montana Knife Company. These guys are doing amazing things. They're building and making knives 100% made and sourced in America. And that in and of itself is a mission worth supporting. American manufacturing, bringing American jobs to Montana, and ultimately supporting good people doing good things over at Montana Knife Company. If you're getting on a hunt or if you spend any time in the kitchen, then please take a look at their knives. I used one of their culinary knives just last night. I use those just about daily at this point, and they cut like butter. They look good, they maintain their edge, and they are great quality knives. So go check it out at montanaknifecompany.com. And if you end up picking something up, use the code Order of Man, all one word, Order of Man. All right, guys, let's get into this. Well, what is sovereignty? We can start with that. Sovereignty is essentially synonymous with liberty. It's freedom. It's the ability to do what you want, when you want, why you want, free of any influence or manipulation or coercion or even threat of punishment dangling over your head if you don't do what it is you want to do. And so many times I see men who relinquish their sovereignty. They relinquish willingly, in a way. They relinquish it to their employers by not building out their own network and making themselves more skilled so that at a moment's notice they could go leave if they wanted to. They live sedentary lifestyles. They don't lock in their diet. They don't work out. They don't train. They don't exercise. And so they make themselves subject to the medical field, which is becoming more and more corrupt and less about the data and the health and the science and more about woke agenda and ideology. So I'm not interested in subjecting myself to the medical community and or big pharmaceutical companies who prey upon people who are sick, that they can continue to pay for medications over potentially the rest of their life. That's relinquishing your sovereignty. In the realm of finances, how many of you strap yourselves with unnecessary debt? You're buying cars. I saw people have vehicle loans that are upwards of $1,000 a month over a 7 and 8 year time frame. Guys, that's absolutely ridiculous. Men are living paycheck to paycheck. Increasingly, they don't have any money set aside, no retirement options. And so who are they beholden to? Well, the government and their employers. So if they get laid off or have a medical condition or lose their job for any number of reasons, they're going to find themselves in a real rough spot. And then what does that do? Well, it puts strain on the economy. It puts strain on their own families. It puts strain on other taxpayers. Now they have to fund another man's lifestyle. We also do it in our relationships, and we give over all control of how we show up. We look for validation from our significant others, hoping that they can give us what we think we need, when in all reality, you should be doing that for yourself. And I'm not saying that isn't or is a reason not to have it and be in a relationship. Certainly there's other benefits of being in a relationship. But if you're hoping that somebody's going to validate you, you're casting your bet on something you have no control over. And what ends up happening is we stay in relationships maybe longer than we ought to. Maybe we pursue relationships that we know are toxic or not good for us because we need that validation. Guys, we need to make ourselves free in all ways, free of influence, free of manipulation, coercion, blackmail, free of competing interests like pharmaceutical companies, for example, governments that would love to see you make just enough to not complain, but not really create any amount of wealth in your life. I know for myself, As I work to build sovereignty in my own life, not only am I more free, but I'm happier, I'm more fulfilled. I can focus on things that are important to me because I'm not strapped with unnecessary debt. And I'm not burdened with the mind chaos that comes with being at the mercy of an employer. How many times have I heard guys say, I'm dissatisfied with my employment because my work or my boss is asking me to do something that goes against my morals or my better judgment. And yet, if you don't have any money set aside and you haven't built a network so that you can go leave your current occupation into something else, should that be called into question, you can't leave. And so you're subject to engage in behavior that goes against who you are as a man. And as you do that, a little piece of your soul dies. And that's not hyperbole. I know that the most dissatisfied times in my life is when I had this idea, this vision of what kind of man I wanted to be and how I wanted to show up. And my actions were misaligned with the vision I had of myself. I wasn't working out. I wasn't paying off debt. I wasn't building skills. I wasn't building relationships. I wasn't showing up powerfully for my family. And it created a lot of discontent and frustration and even anger and contention in my life. I'm not interested in living that kind of life. I want a life of abundance and prosperity and freedom and worry-free life and engaging in things that I want to engage in for the reasons I want to engage in them. This is why sovereignty is so important. On a note, speaking of sovereignty, if you guys are interested in knowing more about this and figuring out how to develop this in your own life, then I would recommend, and of course I'm a bit biased, but I would certainly recommend the book that I wrote in 2016 called Sovereignty, The Battle for the Hearts and Minds of Men. I think I have a few copies in our store at store.orderofman.com. Those are signed paperback copies that I have available. And if you'd rather have not a signed copy, a paperback or a hardcover, or even the audio version or e-version, you can go to Amazon and check out Sovereignty, The Battle for the Hearts and Minds of Men. I think it's a great read, and tens of thousands of other men believe it's a great read, and hopefully it'll improve your life. But let's break this down into the realms, the areas of our lives we should be sovereign, what some of the pitfalls are, and also how we can begin to assume control of our own sovereignty in each of these areas. Number one is faith. Now, I've wrestled with this one a lot. Those of us who believe in God or a higher power in general might have a conflicting thought. Is it your sovereignty as an individual, or is it God's sovereignty? And I think if you're from a Christian perspective, most of us would agree that it's God's sovereignty, that He is sovereign over everything. So how can it be that I'm encouraging you to build your own sovereignty, and yet we know that God is sovereign over the entire world, including our lives? Well, the answer is simply that He's given us the gift of agency. That's explicitly written, documented, that we have free will, that we're able to choose for ourselves how we want to lead our lives. And we can voluntarily decide to deviate from His word, or we can voluntarily decide to embrace His word. So do you relinquish your own sovereignty when you decide to follow His word? The answer is no, you don't. Because at any time you can decide you don't want to. And if you're anything like me, there are plenty of times in your life where you have deviated from His word. But again, this isn't just in the concept of Christianity. This is all spirituality. Spirituality is living for something higher and greater than yourself. And you are, in a way, subjugating yourself to that doctrine or that principle. But ultimately, the idea is that that is going to best serve you and the people that you love and care about. So guys, I think it's very important not to be enslaved by the faiths that we hold, but that we critically analyze, is this going to serve me well? Is this going to serve the people that I love well? And it gives us a direction. And isn't that the most important thing? We get inundated with all sorts of ideas and concepts and theories and ways of living and dogmas and doctrine. And it's very easy to deviate when we don't have a standard bearing, when we don't know exactly where we're going and we don't know exactly how we're going to get there. Having a strong sense of sovereignty in the terms of faith gives you a path to walk on, gives you a litmus test to consider everything else that you might be faced with in life. Are you making the right choice? Well, the answer, if you do follow some level of spirituality or higher power or God, the answer is, are you following that word? Are you holding on to steadfastly the doctrine that you've decided to adopt? And if the answer is no, you know you're deviating. And there's freedom in that. I believe it was Aristotle who said through discipline comes freedom. And more recently, of course, Jocko says discipline equals freedom. This is the concept I'm talking about. If there's a discipline, if there's a practice, and I'm talking about from the concept of spirituality, you have the freedom to act. You have the freedom to dictate your life. You have the freedom to express yourself in congruency with the doctrine or the gospel that you've decided to embrace. Guys, that allows you to focus on more important things and always gives you a litmus test for the decisions that you're making. Let's shift gears and talk about family and friends. A lot of the times I talk with men who are in romantic relationships, and again, I alluded to this earlier in the conversation, we are constantly striving for validation from our wife or significant other, from our children, from other relationships. Many of us are still clinging on to hope that maybe one day our fathers will validate us and tell us we're loved and we're special because we didn't get that when we were children. It could be any number of things. Guys, the most important thing that you need to do when it comes to sovereignty is you need to live with an integrity of yourself. I talked about this earlier in this week's Ask Me Anything. You have to win the battle of integrity with yourself. If you decided that you're going to wake up this morning and you're going to go to the gym, then you better get out of bed and you better go to the gym. If you decided that you're going to start a business, then you need to start a business. If you decided that you're going to lose weight, or you're going to pay off debt, or you're going to build a friendship, or you're going to develop a new skill, then you better be working on those things. The reason this is so important in the context of sovereignty among other people is that you're no longer reliant, or at least less reliant, on what other people think of you because you know you're doing the right thing. And this also comes back to the conversation I had previously about spirituality. I don't need somebody else to validate whether or not I'm making correct and accurate decisions. I already have that through my faith. And I'm not beholden or subjugated to your way of life, your thoughts, your opinions. Now, don't misunderstand me. There are opinions that matter. And I take into consideration the opinions of the people that I care about and who are credible and relevant in my life. But I don't allow it to completely dictate my life. I don't need to turn to anybody else in my life to give me what I need. I can provide that for myself. And isn't that a great thing? Because now the relationship is not necessarily about what I can get out of the relationship. It's now more, what can I give? How can I serve this individual? How can I lean on this person? How can I, not lean on, how can they lean on me? How can I show them that I care about them, that I'm here to serve and love and offer my support in the degree that I can? I'd much rather have a relationship where I'm adding value than just extracting from the relationship. And by the way, we'll talk about it in the context of a woman. If you're seeking her validation and you being in a relationship, and this applies to plenty of men I've talked with, is what you identify as, that's all your worth is wrapped up in the relationship, what happens when the relationship goes away? Maybe, heaven forbid, she dies prematurely. Maybe you go through a divorce. Maybe she steps out on you and cheats on you. And your whole world is crumbled because you have identified or wrapped up your identity in being in that particular relationship. There's a danger in that. And I don't think that we need to give ourselves an exit route or a way out of relationships, but I'm saying that if we can't walk from relationships, from an individual who cannot uphold and honor our boundaries, then we're losing sovereignty to that person. I'm not interested in that. If I have a person in my life, whether it's romantic or platonic, and I have boundaries established and set up, and I have a person in my life who cannot honor that and continues to walk over those boundaries, even though I've communicated them clearly, I can't have that person in my life. And it'll be unfortunate. I hate to lose a friendship or a business partnership. I don't want that to happen, but I'm willing to let that happen if I can't get my boundaries honored and my expectations met. And again, that's because I'm confident in myself and in integrity with myself. Guys, let's pivot and talk about fitness. I'd like to ask you, are you the epitome of fitness? Are you exactly where you want to be? Or are you taking unnecessary medications? Are you unnecessarily tired or drained of energy or weak? And how is that affecting your day? How is it affecting your day if you can't get 7 hours of sleep and you do that consistently for the last several weeks or several months? How is it affecting you if you haven't been to the gym for the past 3 to 5 years? You're not in a better position because you're not. Now you might say, well, I get more done. Do you though? Do you really get more done? You might redirect that time to other ventures, including selfish pursuits. But does that mean you're being productive? I'd argue that fit people are going to be more likely to be more effective and more productive with the same amount of time as somebody who's overweight and out of shape and has sleep apnea and an extra 50 to 80 to 100 pounds that they're carrying around on their midsection. Guys, it's not okay to allow ourselves to slip when it comes to our fitness and then tell ourselves that we want to have success. If you wanted to have success, then we all know unequivocally that being in shape is going to help you better produce that result. Not only does it help you, but it helps the people around you. When I started to get into shape, it's because part of the reason was because I came home from work one day and my kids, my two oldest boys at the time, they were young, they said, "Dad, let's go jump on the trampoline." And I had to look them in the eye and say, "I'm sorry, guys, I can't." I literally could not. I was exhausted. Shame on me. Shame on me for being in the position where I can't go jump on the trampoline with my kids. What a horrible position to be in. That's not a sovereign man. That's somebody who's relinquished control over his life to his habits, his poor habits. My poor habits were eating too much and not working out, being lazy, being slothful, gluttonous even. Guys, we can do better. And we should do better. I don't want to subjugate myself to pharmaceutical companies, to doctors, to the health community, to my own selfish temptations. I want to be strong, and I want to be fit, and I want to have energy, and I want to jump on the trampoline with my kids, but them get tired before I do. That's what a sovereign man would do, and that's how a sovereign man shows up, and that's what he works towards. And guys, the last component of this is finances. And then you've got to get yourself out of debt. You have to get yourselves out of debt. The credit card companies, the banks, these financial institutions, they thrive on the fact that you can't control your spending habits. You cannot spend more than you make. I know Big Daddy government does it pretty well. And they'd like you to do it as well so you can continue to be enslaved to their handouts and their breads and their circuses. But guys, get yourself out of debt. Stop buying things that you can't afford. Stop worrying about what your neighbor's driving and why you want to have a bigger, better truck than he does. Worry about yourself. Worry about improving yourself. Man, I remember there were days of my life where I would literally pace around in the backyard, so much so that I wore a dirt path into our grass in our backyard. And I did that because I was stressed. I was stressed about paying the mortgage. I was stressed about putting groceries in the refrigerator and putting a roof over my family's head. I was stressed to the max. And look, this is a season that all of us go through because when you're younger, you just don't have the money. And you're trying to build skills and develop skills and be smart with your finances. And that's what I would suggest, whether you're young or old. I'm not interested in bogging my mental clarity and my personal well-being down by worrying about how I'm going to pay that Visa credit card or how I'm going to go pay, USA Bank, my $800 truck payment. I'm okay with having a little bit older of a truck. I don't need a new truck. Mine runs just fine. Looks decent, runs just fine. No payment on it. Haven't had a payment in probably 6 years now. I've got another truck I haven't had a payment on in literally 20 plus years. And I still drive that around because I take care of my shit. And I don't buy unnecessary things. Now, can I afford a new truck? Yes, I can. But I'd rather take that money and invest back into this business, or invest in a new business, or invest in the market, or invest in something where it's actually going to work for me. And then in 20 years, if I want to go buy 100 trucks, I'll be able to do that because I took care of my financial situation. I despise financial institutions. I despise credit card companies. I'm repulsed by them because they want my... In what other context would you willingly say, yep, I'll make myself beholden to you, I will be your slave? In what other context would a man who respects himself do that? None. But we've been conditioned our entire lives, probably from our parents and from just cultural norms and beliefs, that you're supposed to be in debt. That it's okay if you have debt. And so we're just looking at the payments, so we're looking at the interest rates, so we're looking at the terms, and we're not really looking at the fact that that $40, $50, $60, $70,000 truck is going to cost you $120,000 by the time all is said and done. And what are you going to have to show for it? A $10,000 truck that doesn't run, that you hope you can sell on Facebook Marketplace. Doesn't sound like a very good deal to me. Not to mention the mental space that it takes up worrying about paying for that damn $1,000 a month payment. Guys, you're letting other people, and by the way, this is true about keeping up with the Joneses, the comparison trap. You're letting that enslave you. You're letting that have control over your thoughts. And then your thoughts are leading to poor actions, which continue to exacerbate the problem that you found yourself in. In all ways, be sovereign, guys. In all ways, think of how you can do something or how you can put yourself in the position to do something where you're not going to be influenced, strong-armed, manipulated, coerced, blackmailed, made to feel guilty about doing things that you don't want to do. I wake up every day and I get to decide what I want to do, when I want to do it, why I want to do it, how I want to do it. And I'll tell you what, it's a lot better living life like that than having to go into work and do what my boss tells me to do, whether it aligns with my values or not, worry about what mortgage payment or what credit card I'm going to pay, not having the energy to play with my kids or to engage in hunting and sports and activities that I'm excited about, to not have the energy to serve the people that I love and to decide who it is I want to actually serve, to not be just bogged down by looking for validation from external sources like my neighbors who don't make my mortgage payment, or other people that I have in my life like, oh, tell me how wonderful I am. I don't need that from people. And I think it's a much better place to be, and I'm encouraging you to do the same thing. Now, granted, we're talking about this from a 30,000-foot view, but if you want additional information, go pick up a copy of Sovereignty, The Battle for the Hearts and Minds of Men. If you're in financial pressure and stress, go down to the library and do it. You know, I heard about this guy. He charges an unreasonable amount of money for people to be in some of his network groups. And he has the audacity to talk about people's finances. And then he charged these people exorbitant amounts of money. It's like, what are you doing? Like, you're telling these people you want them to be financially free, and you're charging them so excessively, hoping that they're going to, pay for your lifestyle. You want to be sovereign, but you're not worried about them being sovereign. Now, I'm not saying that, these people don't have a choice. Sure, they have a choice in how they spend their money. And I'm not saying that everything should be free either. I mean, we charge for our products and services, but I hope we do it in a reasonable way. But guys, always align yourself with who you want to be. And your actions should be aligned with that. And if you find yourself saying, I can't do that because, then you know you've relinquished control of your life in some degree. Consider it. Think about it. Pick up a copy of the book Sovereignty, The Battle for the Hearts and Minds of Men. And in it, I talk about where that battle is coming from. I talk about how to address it in each one of these quadrants and how to make yourself a free man, which is ultimately what we want. We want to be free. And it might feel hard at times, especially if you're working on the handouts of other people or the government or institutions and you're counting on them to provide for you. It's hard at first to break the shackles of slavery, frankly. And that's what the financial institutions are doing. That's what the medical community is doing. What Big Pharma is doing. That's what the government's doing. And we need to be aware of what's happening and actively fight against it. So guys, there's my message to you. I hope it serves you. If you guys have additional thoughts and ideas about how to build your own sovereignty, please let me know. Share the book, share this podcast with other people who need to hear it, because we need a nation of free men who aren't beholden to financial institutions, medical communities, the government, and their institutions, and also other people. That's the kind of man I'm working to become, and I hope that's the kind of man you're working to become. All right, guys, we'll be back next week. Until then, go out there, take action, Build your sovereignty and become the man you are meant to be.